Greetings, friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. After the unexpected resignation of French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu, one of the closest associates of President Emmanuel Macron, who stayed as head of government for a record 27 days. The French president was on the verge of a real political collapse, and the question arises how Macron will get out of this situation in the coming days. Sébastien Lecornu became the third Prime Minister of France appointed by Macron after the last elections to the National Assembly of the country. These elections themselves turned out to be a serious political mistake by the French president, who, after unsuccessful elections to the European Parliament for his party, tried to create a broad bloc of opposition to the far-right forces led by Marine Le Pen. This maneuver of Emmanuel Macron, we can say, was justified then. Both centrists and leftists, who united in a new electoral bloc, opposed the strengthening of Marine Le Pen's positions. However, in the National Assembly itself, it turned out that there are practically no forces capable of really influencing government activities and resolving issues about the further functioning of the state through joint efforts. Neither the right, led by Marine Le Pen, nor the ultra-left, led by Jean-Luc Mélenchon, are capable of constructive cooperation with the president of the country and the centrists, but they can unite with each other in order to prevent the solution of those issues that are brewing before the prime ministers appointed by Macron. And thus, it becomes obvious that the main task of the opponents of the French president is not even their own role in governing the state, but early parliamentary or even presidential elections. Both the ultra-right and the ultra-left are generating instability, which, from their point of view, should lead to a new election of parliament. And in this case, each of the opposing forces, of course, counts on success. Thus, after criticizing the new composition of the government drawn up by Sébastien Lecornu, and the resignation of the Prime Minister, who stated that he did not see the possibility to continue working under the current conditions, the French president did not have much room for maneuver. The first opportunity, of course, is to calmly appoint a new head of government. However, he can expect the same failure a few weeks later. A close associate of Macron is definitely not the person who will be able to pass a new draft budget of France through the National Assembly. The representative of the left camp will cause the natural bewilderment of the right forces, and will face the impossibility of further activity, and the representative of the right camp will be blocked by the left. And in this sense, the now retired former French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu is absolutely right, who said that representatives of political parties in the French National Assembly act as if each of these parties has a majority. The second option that the French president may consider is new elections to the National Assembly. But here it is unlikely to be possible to recreate a broad front of counteraction to the far-right forces. And most likely, the new parliamentary elections will strengthen the positions of the National Association and open the way for representatives of this political force, even if it is not Marine Le Pen, to the Élysée Palace. And, finally, the third option, to which Emmanuel Macron has already been called upon by political opponents, and has been called for 4 months. This is the resignation of the head of state and early presidential elections. But Emmanuel Macron has repeatedly made it clear that he does not agree with this approach, and is not going to resign before the expiration of his term of office. The opponents of the French president do not have any real political tools that could force him to resign. Thus, the most likely scenario is the deepening of the political crisis and instability in France. And it is in this situation that the country will, one might say, survive until the next presidential election, even if early elections to the National Assembly are held now, and a political force appears that has a majority in this National Assembly. After all, in the end, there is a battle going on for the legacy of Emmanuel Macron, for who will become the new head of the French state. Such instability, of course, weakens France at the most critical moment in the history of Europe, when the Russian Federation is seriously thinking about weakening the European Union and the position of European countries in the international arena, and has actually already started a hybrid war with NATO member countries located on the European continent. At the same time, we can talk about the strengthening of the positions of the ultra-right and ultra-left forces in European countries, which threatens a crisis of European democracy itself, and the further collapse of the European, and perhaps the Euro-Atlantic project. In this situation, of course, a strong France is very important. The interaction of France, Germany, Spain, and Italy as the leading countries of the continent, that can prevent this negative development of events. And the weakening of the position of the French president, as well as political chaos in his country. Of course, it will not only be in the interests of Marine Le Pen or Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who dream of political revenge, and of fighting for the Élysée Palace. What is happening now in France, we can say, directly meets the political interests of a person who thinks not so much about France as about Russia. Of course, we are talking about President Vladimir Putin, who is ready to take advantage of any European instability in his own interests. And these interests clearly do not correspond to the interests of France and Europe. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it, subscribe to my social networks, to the channels in Patreon, BAME, Coffee, and Donatello, which helps to develop these products. Use the sponsorship function in YouTube itself. The world.